Well, welcome to our panel discussion about data quality in research and how technology and AI is affecting data integrity. I'm Deborah Harding, I'm the Managing Director of the Market Research Society, and I'm the lead for the MRS's Data Quality Initiative. The challenges of data quality and the threat of fraud in research isn't new. However, fraudulent activity is becoming increasingly sophisticated, particularly in online research, and it poses a significant risk to our sector's future. And in response, MRS, together with other national associations, including the US's Insights Association, have come together to create the Global Data Quality Initiative. This international partnership is an important means to confront the ongoing and emerging risks to data quality, which each partner is tackling in a different aspect of that challenge. I have a great lineup today, who I will briefly introduce, but before we get stuck into the very relevant and thorny topic, I have asked each of my panellists to provide a fun fact, so it only seems fair that I also am as equally candid. My fact is I have absolutely zero sense of direction. Absolutely none. So if you ever have the misfortune to be near me and a map, go in the opposite direction to the one I'm going in and you'll be fine. So now to my panellists. First up, we have Melanie Courtwright, who is the CEO of the Insights Association, another partner of the GDQ, the trade association that oversees the insights profession in the US, and is a career researcher herself with nearly 3 decades of experience in market research. Now, Melanie's fun fact is that she's a trained musician and vocalist and loves a good night of karaoke or singing as a first soprano in choirs. So maybe at the party later, Melanie. Maybe. Next, we have Simon Glanville, who started work as a telephone interviewer while at university 35 years ago, and has held data collection and ops-focused roles at Harris, TNS, GfK, and has been MD at Ronan during 3 separate spells totaling 16 years. The fun fact for Simon is that he once conducted some research where he interviewed Paddy Ashdown, Neil Kinnock, and Jeremy Beadle, all in the same study. God only knows what that was about. Anyway.
They are anymore.
And finally, but by no means least, is Debbie Lawrence, who's been involved in the world of financial markets data for nearly 3 decades, and most recently leading on topics such as data rights, data IP, and the use of data in generative AI for the London Stock Exchange. Now, Debbie is a season ticket holder at Fulham Football Club. But she is the excellent, thank you, Jerome. But she is the first to admit that after nearly 5 years, she still hasn't understood the offside rule, and a football-mad teenager has basically given up explaining. So that kind of feels like good grounding for this discussion, actually. So let's get down to it. OK, Melanie, how significant is the research sector's data fraud issue? And have we got metrics?
Yeah, so significant is a hard word because it begs metrics, and I will be the first to say that our profession does not have the metrics that we need to accurately measure fluctuations in data fraud and fraud issues. It's significant in the fact that everyone's talking about it, everyone's feeling it, everyone's worried about it. It is an emotional and a fear-based conversation, and we need to move it to I want to say data-driven, but I think we bend that in the game that we played in 3 a minute ago. But we need to move it to a data conversation. So we're working very hard as one of the pillars of the Global Data Quality Initiative in this first half to create metrics, fraud metrics, true fraud, abandoned metrics, set actual benchmarks, track them over time, and then begin to really see what the state of the union is for data quality and fraud. And I think it's important to start with language, though, right? Data quality is the umbrella term. It's everything to do with the fitness of a data set for making decisions. It's the umbrella. It includes a lot of things other than fraud. Fraud is an element of it, but it means malicious intent to obfuscate your identity. If you're not familiar with these terms, I hope you'll go to globaldataquality.org and hit the glossary button at the top, because we've taken the time to say if we're going to talk about the state of data quality, we need to start with a common, accurate language, and then we need to measure against that language. So the glossary's done, and our next step is to work hard on the benchmarks, which we hope to release by the end of the first half.
So Simon, I mean, as a research supplier, this is going to be a daily issue for you. How's your organisation been addressing the challenges? And over the last year, has it been getting better? Is it getting worse?
Yeah, I should explain. So I'm approaching this from very much a B2B perspective. 90% of the work that we do is with a business audience, and quite a senior business audience as well. So incentives can be pretty high, and that encourages people to want to get into studies. So typically, if we're doing a broad recruitment campaign, then we'll see somewhere around 20% of fraudulent activity, people that we can identify either through pre-screeners or screeners as they're not the people that we really want to talk to. And that's certainly got worse, and we believe is getting more organised. There are groups, communities of people that are training each other how to get into surveys, how to claim incentives. That's something I think we can collectively try and tackle as an industry. But yeah, it's an increasing problem, and it's not just going to go away unless we do something about it. And it's not just a market research problem. I think I was reading LinkedIn have done lots of work over the last couple of years in terms of looking at fake profiles and things like that. But there was one point in time where there were 500,000 employees of Apple in terms of profiles on LinkedIn at the time when there were 164,000 employees of Apple worldwide. So that's the kind of scale that we need to deal with. So if you're looking at validating profiles of participants, then you need to look at smart sources and not just the obvious sources. So in terms of the investment that we do, and we're a small company, there's limited amounts that we can do. And maybe 18 months ago, when we looked at what we could do across the whole of the market research process, that we probably identified 25 different things that we could do, and you can't do them all. So we focused on data verification and building out screening, pre-screening of participants at a business level that we could kind of go back to once they're verified. We focused on engagement, and because we don't always give participants the best experience, I think, in surveys. So at least around that, we can be giving them consistent email communications. We can be reacting to incentive queries and things like that. That's kind of where we're focusing right now. And then the other things, there are lots of expert companies that can contribute and who are experts in doing this, who we partner with. And that's for data validation, data quality checking, whether that's flatliners or straight liners or speeders or whatever, but also at the point of incentive payment, we've partnered with companies that do that as experts, and they can do a lot more around that kind of identity fraud than we could ever try and do individually, I think. So things like that.
Yeah, that's helpful. I think your point about LinkedIn is really important, because this isn't just, it's not like the research sector is being victimised. This is a global problem across all different businesses, which really comes where you come in, Debbie, because, I mean, in the market research space, we talk of fraudulent data, but in the financial sector, how does this manifest? And what is keeping you up at night? How has the London Stock Exchange dealt with the issues?
So, thanks very much, and thank you for having me. As I posted on my LinkedIn group, I'm really stepping outside of my comfort zone by coming and speaking to an industry that I haven't engaged in before. But ultimately, we use the term data quality all the time. The financial services industry is powered by data. Financial information and portfolio decisions are based on data. We don't use the word fraud because that obviously has a knee-jerk reaction to the risk function within any financial organization. But we do worry about data quality, data lineage, in other words, and the provenance of the data. We need, especially because we're highly regulated, as much as a lot of the financial services is sort of at pains against the regulation, it actually is our friend when it comes to data, because it's enforcing the fact that the whole industry has to get behind the need to provide transparency and provenance all the way through to the data. So when you get audited, we provide data, we sell data. The London Stock Exchange Group sells data to every financial, probably every financial institution in some shape or form around the world. But we have to be able to prove where the data came from. And that's really key. And I think that's what's quite different in the world that you guys are living in with regard to the fraud. We don't crowdsource. We tried it. It didn't work very well. But the concept of sort of relying on a sort of population to source data in our world would be deemed very risky, because we have to be able to prove the provenance. And for that, you need tools. You need to be able to invest in the lineage capabilities of the data as it flows through systems, and especially now as it goes into AI tools, that becomes a real big challenge. But to answer your question, sorry, about what keeps me up at night, funny enough, it happened last week where you get a sort of an email from security just to say, we're noticing some interesting sort of behavior on a server. We've closed it down. My first question is there any risk of somebody having written over data? Because for us, having fraudulent or fake data going out into the market would be catastrophic from a reputational standpoint. And that's where all of our risks and our cyber risks would come into play. So fake data in the financial services would be catastrophic. And I would always worry about somebody, even from a malicious internal case standpoint or external, being able to have that right capability over our data.
So how has the industry
That would be on
responded
the
to that?
front page of the Financial Times.
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. But how does the industry responded to that? Because you say it's catastrophic. So is there a drive to greater industry collaboration?
So there is definitely a recognition that the industry has created a huge challenge as it relates to the data distribution and the permutations around data rights. We've created a beast. Technology is moving very, very fast, and we need to be able to move with it. So a lot of organizations are leaning into technology such as digital rights, where you think about it as a fingerprint. You put a fingerprint onto a piece of data as sort of core metadata, which then travels with it through the life cycle of that data, giving us as suppliers the confidence that the data is accurate, but equally the consumer of the data can then interpret that fingerprint. It requires investment, and it requires, I'm not going to say everybody because I don't think we'll ever get to that point, but a vast majority of people and organizations to get behind the technology so that you've got both an outbound and an inbound. And this is where, as an industry, and I would look, you and I have spoken about this, you have to look at the cost benefit. What is the cost of fraud in your industry, and is it worth investing in to mitigate against it? And at some point, you get to that tipping point where everybody goes, this is getting too much. Or you have a situation where the fraudulent data has created an event which nobody would get behind, right? So in our world, that event would be a price drop or a massive, a market-moving event, as we call it in the financial services, and in your industry it would probably be something slightly different. But nobody wants something splashed across the front page of a newspaper off the back of fraudulent or inaccurate data.
So it does lend the question, though, Simon, that do you believe there is scope for the research sector to work collaboratively towards new solutions in the way that the financial sector? I mean, are we getting to that tipping point where actually there is so much at risk that we need to be doing more?
Yeah, everybody, as I said, suffers similar, if not exactly the same problems as we do B2B. I'm sure the same problems exist within consumer as well. And it is such a big issue that I think we can only address it collaboratively. And actually, I've always found the market research community to actually enjoy working together, whether it's from a technology advancement perspective or just talking about what different companies are doing. So I would be optimistic that absolutely we could do that. I think the work that's been done, from the MRS part of the GDQ is amazing, and there's almost exactly the same session happening at SampleCon, I think, in the US right now. So, I mean, it genuinely is a global initiative. But we do need to be able to identify what's good and what's bad, or maybe not even what's bad, but what's good or what's not so good. Because quality control comes at a cost, yeah? And we don't mind providing that quality control, but we don't influence the industry. The industry tells us as a supplier what they want, and I think there needs to be a conversation about whether there's a need to have more expensive, let's face it, quality data. Because if there's not, then there's lots of conversations going on about synthetic and tech data providers and low-cost providers, I'm sure would fill that gap as well. So I think we all need to talk about what we want, because we do a lot of qual work, qual's growing. We don't get pushback on costs so much about qual because we phone verify them. So we know that they are who they are at the point of interview. We get much more pushback at quant. But it's the same profile of people that we're talking to, so you do begin to wonder why for one and why not the other. But that's something that we can address, I think, collectively. I think the GDQ initiative is great as a start point. I think there's lots more conversations to be had. I think we need to be sensible about the way that we think about what we pay for interviews, because if you want to talk to a senior business leader for 20 minutes for 20 quid, you know.
Well, Melanie, I mean, the Insights Association, they really kind of kicked off this whole discussion, and you're very passionate about this.
I am.
What more needs to be done?
Well, the biggest problem that we have right now, as I talk to buyers and clients all over the world, they want and are willing to pay more for quality research, but they don't have a clear quality buying signal. They don't know when they buy sample or data or research for sure that it's going to be quality. There's no like mark of approval, or there's no metrics or certification on sampling. There's not even metrics and benchmarks like we talked about earlier. So so the GDQ is on a journey. The first year of the journey is to create tools that will help us. So we've created some tools already. There are many more coming out, even in the just the next 6 months and the next year. And on the other side of that journey of tools and discovery and language and agreement on the basics of standards of certificate of data quality, we want to end in a place where there is some certifications and some stamps and some audits that can be done that will create some clear buying signals for buyers. And to get there, we are going to need this consortium of cooperation. But all things that I'm hearing, all signals are that the profession's ready for it. We've reached this kind of pivotal point, and to some extent, they're even begging for it. Even the panel providers themselves are saying, I want to be able to have some sort of stamp that tells my clients that we are doing things the right way. And so we think we're at the right point to put together that really collaborative set of tools and documents and language and standards and guidance that lead to a very clear quality buying signal. And that's not to say that you won't still be able to compete on quality. We're talking about the standard, right? And so then companies will compete above that standard. No different than food standards and safety standards in automobiles and standards in banking. You compete above the standard, and we just need to set that standard, certify to it, and compete above that.
Yeah, I obviously very much in agreement with you, Melanie, about that. But of course, life doesn't stand still while we try to make solutions. And, obviously the growth in AI, had to say it happened. It's taken me over 15 minutes for me to mention AI, but it's creating new challenges. What's happening in finance in terms of, what additional challenges are you seeing, Debbie?
Oh my God, I feel like I've just been on a monumental learning over the last 6 months, and at times I feel like I need another brain here as I try and learn about the world of AI. But to your point, Melanie, and also leaning into AI, AI has this concept of responsible AI. And it's not just that, and that spreads across all the industries, this sort of like rubber stamp of what does responsible engagement in AI look like, and maybe that's something as well that you could sort of lean into sort of the whole market research space, is this concept of responsibility, because there's that ethical aspect to the word, but in the AI world, it's throwing up a huge amount of challenges in the financial markets, and I think I touched on it briefly. The biggest one is around IP. And I think that goes also across other industries. We've already seen some of the sort of lawsuits against the Getty Images or Getty Images, suing ChatGPT and others around the use of their AI. And there's this misconception by a lot of people that just because something's available on the internet, it's free for use in AI, which it absolutely is not, particularly if you're creating a commercial product off the back of that tool. So the lawyers, I'm sure around the world, are making a lot of money off this data IP discussion. So I think that's the biggest challenge. Also, the amount of data that's being consumed is just going up exponentially. We are in a partnership with Microsoft, so I get to hear these fantastic, mind-boggling stats that the power that's used to drive ChatGPT 4 is the size of Australia. So, which is just like, holy crap, that's a lot of air conditioning. You know, it's sorry, I don't think I mean to swear on the panel.
Yeah, you're okay. You're in good company.
But
Crap's not a swear word.
oh, isn't it good? So IP, just the volume of data, and then what does the large language model or the generative AI produce? So the concept of then having synthetic data in the system, and again in the financial markets, knowing that you're using a synthetic data point or a real data point is an important differentiation, because obviously you might make a conscious decision to use that synthetic data point, but you want to know that it's synthetic. So again, it comes back to this sort of fingerprinting, tagging concept to say that has been generated by AI, and the data that is generated, that data point, we can trace back. So I don't think we're out the woods yet. At all in the world of AI. It just seems to be moving really, really fast.
Yeah.
And you know, even in our space, 6 months ago, we were talking about creating our own large language model. So we our competitors like Bloomberg, nobody's talking about that anymore. Why? Because it's expensive. It's expensive, and why wouldn't you just let the Microsofts of the world just do it, and you layer on your services on top of it?
But I mean, Simon, thinking about this, I mean, AI, it does present a challenge to data quality. But I mean, it's also an opportunity to help to address some of the data quality issues. Do you think the research sector can use the new technology to create some new solutions?
Absolutely, and certainly it's creating more of a challenge. I think we're only just beginning to see people using AI-generated personas and that's to get incentives. I don't mean from a synthetic perspective. Yes, absolutely, and you know, AI technology and the work on the MRS work group recently, I think, identified 33 or 34 different ways that you can, different techniques that you can use on studies, and that's everything from some of the more traditional checks, that, you know, open-ended checks, sense checks, through to, you know, IP address checking and geolocation, and most of those techniques are available to most people at a relatively affordable cost. They will develop. There's not going to be an answer straight away. It's something that, again, it goes back to the collaboration, that we need to be sharing our learnings and what works and maybe what doesn't work as well, to be able to identify people quickly. But yes, in the same way that we're certainly going to get more people who are trying to get access to our studies and consequently the incentives, then there's definitely more scope for us to be able to use that. And not just from a stopping people perspective, but I think, why do people act fraudulently to get into studies? It's to get monetary incentives. So I think being able to look at things like offering experts, and again I'm talking about B2B, summary reports about the subject matter that they've just shared with you, would be quite a neat way. And AI would give us the opportunity, perhaps, if we get end clients that agree to be able to share data, to get away from that kind of money transaction.
Can I just lean in?
Yes.
I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't know enough about your industry at all, but my sense and my understanding so far is that I wouldn't be surprised that if over the next 12 to 18 months, it actually lowers your cost of having to incentivize your community to, because your AI tools are going to be able to mine for that data almost in a way that you can mine for a massive volume and weed out the chaff without actually having to pay a huge amount of money to individuals, because the AI tool is going to be able to do it for you. Yeah. You know, point it in a certain direction, and it's amazing what it can do. It's almost quite scary. And then to your B2B function, the summarization capabilities are phenomenal. Yeah. And I think that's really where some of the power is. And also, from my experience, what we try to do with some of our B2B engagements where we're trying to get access is offering them peer comparisons. So we're doing this for you in this sector, but if you engage with us, we can give you some peer comparisons off the back of the research. You'll be amazed at how much that quid pro quo works, especially when you're talking to executives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Melanie, this does also. Oh, sorry, do you want to?
I was just going to say, I don't know if you guys have heard the term bothism. How many of you heard the term bothism? It's a term that we're using in the US now, but it's that something diametrically opposed can be true at the same time. So in this AI concept, AI is both really a benefit to the future of data quality, but it's also really a threat to the future of data quality. Both of those things are true at exactly the same time. So while we're running toward these tools that that we can use to clean up our data, find out outliers, the bad guys are running towards them to create fake personas, to shore up their open ends, and so we're both chasing this, the same tools but for opposite purposes. And so I'm curious to see how fast AI for good will keep up with AI for bad.
Absolutely, good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
But I think also one community we haven't mentioned up to now is clients. I mean, Simon's briefly touched upon the costs and how and what clients are willing to pay for, but they need to be involved in this quality discussion clearly. So, what are the plans going forward to engage clients and to harness their interest in this, in helping to create some new solutions?
Yeah, so you were with me at CRC last year when we spoke to, CRC is a large conference that is mainly corporate researchers in the room, brands, clients. And their interest is high, but their ability to consume very complicated processes is low. So what they're asking from the GDQ is for us to give them very simple things that they can consume, and they're willing to re-engage. And as I said, they're willing to put their money behind quality if they have a clear quality signal to buy against. So we're working with them on the language guide. We're working with them to make sure that every survey from now on always has a secure end link. The little things that they can do that are simple things for them to ask, simple things for them to follow. But if we ask them to sit down and go through a battery of questions with every one of their partners, they're never going to do that. So we're working to create the complexity that sits below for the agencies and sample providers, and then we're bubbling it up to simple rules for the clients, and they're eating it up. They're hungry for it. So we just have to continue to storytell and impact even in this as we present this to the clients.
Well, we've had a question from the floor via Slido, which is, why didn't blockchain take off, as it seemed to offer a solution, partially solution? Who wants to respond to the question of blockchain?
Oh, I don't know if I know enough about blockchain. I still think there's a lot of people out there that think blockchain ultimately will be the solution for some of the security standpoint. I'll be honest with you, if I found AI difficult to understand, blockchain's one that's just at a different level. There's still a lot of discussion around how the digital contracts, which is essentially what the blockchain is, how the digital contracts can help here. And I don't know whether the statement of it hasn't taken off is true. It's just probably hasn't taken off as fast as people thought it would. Look at crypto, it goes up and goes down.
Yeah, I think the reason it didn't take off is because for the consumers, they need to be in the blockchain with a verifiable identity, and the consumers weren't willing to go run at blockchain. They were quite skittish and nervous about it. And so they weren't able to get the scale of the population with a recordable record. And then there was this issue of indelibility. Do you guys know what I mean by that? So people aren't indelible in what they think isn't indelible. And so, think about even gender. Today I say I'm a woman. Tomorrow I might think differently. But in blockchain world, my gender is permanent. It's indelible. And so there were some key flaws to adoption and security, and some key flaws to indelibility, and then some key flaws to scale and the quickness with which blockchain could come back and forth that made it difficult to take off. Now, that's not to say something like that won't happen in the future. And there's probably people out here who have a better answer than I do. I'm cognizant there's some very smart people in this room.
I think people are intimidated by it.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I am.
But that's that. When I was at Dynata, that was the conversations that we were having.
I'm keeping an eye on the time, so we're at the point where I would like you each to give a piece of advice, because this issue is a very hot topic at the moment. What's the one piece of advice each of you would give to the people in this room when they go away and need to address their data quality? Simon, why don't you go first?
To a very basic level, you use encrypted links, I think, on your survey invitations. If you don't do that, then, no
Never,
hope.
ever run another survey without a secure link.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of information out there, and there's lots of information coming from the MRS and GDQ generally. And I know, is it the DCI in the US? The
CDI.
CDI.
We almost called it the Data Integrity Committee, but think about that acronym for a moment. We had to redo it to CDI.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's lots of sources for information. There's lots of people sharing information. So I think go in, read the information.
Debbie.
Oh gosh, I didn't prep for this one. I think you've got to run towards AI, not away from it, but also find a way to digitize your data as much as possible. But start small, be prepared to fail fast, and move on and figure out whether the return on investment is worth it.
And Melanie.
Well, you have 9 associations in the world: SOMAR, MRS, Insights Association, CRIC, Sample. Yeah, we have 9 strong associations who are going to make a difference in this area. So my encouragement is to get involved in that initiative somewhere, wherever you are in the world. Each of those organizations has a work stream. SMR just released on survey design, and they're thinking about what they're going to do next. Insights Association, in partnership with MRS, did the glossary, and now we're working on the benchmarks, and we're going to do a training module on the basics of data quality. And you've got some really great resources coming out soon on fraud technology and qualitative, and we're going to build a warehouse of standards, best practices, and then we're going to lean into starting to certify against some of those things. So I would encourage you to think about that now and to get involved, because I don't think that we cannot solve this unless we all come together.
Well, I mean, this discussion could run and run.
Yeah.
And as you know, with my sense of direction, we could end up absolutely anywhere. But we do have to conclude today's session. But I would please join me in thanking Debbie, Melanie and Simon for today. Thank you.